Welcome to Dr. Freedom, where we give you the strategies, mindset, and tactics on how to elevate your practice and your life. I'm Dr. Shitel Patel. I started my practice in a Starbucks over 7 years ago, and I built it brick by brick to a multi-location practice with an aesthetic OR and a software company. I'm here to give you the secrets to unlock that time and freedom for you. All right, so today we're going to be talking about family and kids. And so in my practice, I have made it a non-negotiable to pick up my kids every day from school. And there's a reason behind it. Whether it be my own story, my own childhood of where I was having to grow up a lot quicker than average because I grew up on a motel and was raised in a family business. And we were left to grow up fairly quickly in terms of what we were exposed to in our surroundings. And with those surroundings, it also left other things to be wanted in terms of the connection and the communication. And this is pretty dear to my heart because, it's 3 years to the date that my dad passed away. And he literally passed 6 months after he retired. And during that process, I was able to spend some time with him, towards the end as he had stage 4 cancer and super rare type of cancer. And it was just not in the cards in terms of what time that he had left. And, there's a lot of time for reflection. And in that reflection, it was always about him wanting to have spent more time with us as his kids. I have an older sister and we grew up in this family motel and it was all about work, right? It was 24/7. There was no other help. We worked night shifts, day shifts. We cleaned the rooms. We fixed things. There was never an end to the task list. And that task list continued for decades for my dad. And in those decades, it's one of those things that you don't realize until it's much later, and sometimes it's too late. And I think that was the scenario for him, and it being 3 years now that, there was a definitely change in my life, the way that I looked at it, the way that I lived it from before and after, right? I think with my dad, it was more so that to pick up the phone and have that conversation. And even though it wasn't as close as it could have been in terms of relationship, it was still one that I respected and cherished. And so in having that relationship and now not having it 3 years later to say, I can't ask him the questions. I don't have a safety net in terms of what to ask, what to do next, what to expect. Where is that wisdom, that the grace with age that can come over time for that? And I think that's where it comes down to say of hey, why is it important to maintain those relationships? Why is it important to spend the time when it's available and in front of you versus the endless task list, the things that we have to do on a daily basis because we signed up for those things, right? But we also signed up to be husbands, wives, sons, parents, kids, to have those relationships with each other in those arenas. And, it's the same reason why Kobe Bryant, right? He literally would fly and pick up his daughter and take her to the next event because that was the time to know what happened, to know the feelings, the emotions, the things that were important, the inner kind of passions of what a day-to-day life is and where to impart the knowledge, the wisdom that we already have because we used to be kids, right? I think that's one of the things is as we get older, we forget all the different things that it felt like and the things that we didn't know as children and why it had affected us so much. Why the the emotions and the regulations of some of those things were a little bit off or a little bit different? Or did we have somebody to learn from? Is that where we got that tool set from, right? Or were we just learning it from our own mistakes, our failures, our missteps? Each one of these times, like these pieces that actually come into play. And that's where spending that time is super important. It's critical, right? Whether it's the drop off, whether it's the pickup, it's creating that space to actually have the conversation. That piece of connection is priceless. Even you think about the billionaires out there and how they spend their time and what they create is important. Families usually pretty close to the top of their list. That's that connectivity, that whole thing on what would somebody that is your kin do for you, right? If you ask them for a favor, if, I think there was a study done somewhere in California at one of the colleges about asking, a friend, a family member, a parent, and a grandparent to do a certain task of sending back a photo of them and you, right? And in terms of that, the highest percentage of people that will actually do it for you, even regardless of the relationship, whether it's close or not, it's kin, right? It's the grandparents. Like 97% of grandparents completed the task within the time frame that it was allotted, right? That's 97%. It went to like 70% for parents, and then it went to 15% for friends. Now, how do we place importance in our daily structures, in our lives that we live right now, in terms of the friendships that we have, the family members we have, whether close or not, and the kids and the parents that we have? And so that's where I think it's super important to create that space and time to say, all right, this is where it starts, this is where it ends. Kids will only be kids for a certain period of time, right? 75% of the time that we have with our kids is before the age of 12.
All right, let's get to it. What does AdVital do for your aesthetic practice or med spa? Our current clients are making an extra $60,000 to $65,000 to their bottom line every month over month, because they're able to nurture their current patient base and also amplify their qualified leads. Now reach out to AdVital to learn more.
75%. So you have 12 years, right? And depending on how old your kids are right now, you're already on the clock to say, did I create a meaningful relationship, a connection that will last a lifetime? And now that's up to each one of us to answer that question. But at the same time, if we don't know that's the question to ask, we don't know how to prioritize what we do in the time that we have right now. My kids are fairly young, and so this is super important to me. It's one of those staggering things to say, what do you make time for? What do you not make time for? We are ambitious. We are creatures of habit. We are creatures of curiosity at the same time, right? But can you figure out ways to do things with your kids and family members to create that connection, that bond, and then also grow that over a period of time to the curiosity and the other knowledge bases that you have to impart them, a way to give back more. So your generation is not just the legacy of the things you leave behind, but it's the concepts, the knowledge, the way that you tie together the information so they can apply it to the next decade, the next 100 years, right? Of what they're going to face, of what the changes that may happen, right? Technology is changing every day. I mean, I think about my lifetime. I'm in the decade of like where cell phones were flip phones, right? Where you had rotary phones even before that, in that bridge gap of all the different things that have changed. And the adaptation of it is because of some of the knowledge that got passed down and some of the environments that I've been able to be in. Now, if I can pass that down at a younger age and give them that knowledge at a sooner time point, why wouldn't I? And that's where I think the time is one piece of saying, okay, well, I pick up my kids every day. The second part, am I present in that time that I have with them? Or am I still worried and repeating what I had happen earlier in the day? And that's the other piece of like, how do you snap yourself right into that next moment to say, I'm here and I'm present for it right now, to be open to receive and open to give. And a lot of times I'm learning more from them than they are from me in terms of the conversations of what it felt like to be a kid, what it felt like to be curious, what it felt like to figure out what was important. And I think those are the meaningful moments that if you could stack over the period of your lifetime, you would find fulfillment. And that's where I think it is super important to pick up your kids every day or drop them off. Your choice.
Thanks for listening to Dr. Freedom Podcast. I hope you found some value in this podcast, and if you could hit the subscribe button and share with a friend if you found this content valuable.